When I first started after fellowship, I said, I'm going to do locums. I started working with a locums company. And there was at one point where I just said, look, here's my calendar. You can fill it up for me, right? And that was a big mistake, guys. I worked for a whole week, and then the last shift was on a Tuesday, and I did a 24-hour shift, and I finished Wednesday morning. And I was supposed to be at a place 2 hours away and work starting at like 1 o'clock p.m. And the locums person knew this, but you got to remember, like, their focus is how much can I get this person to work?
You opened yourself up to a vulnerability. He essentially took advantage of that.
Nobody's going to care about your money more than you, and nobody's going to care about your schedule and your working life more than you.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Exactly.
Boom. What up, everybody? This is another What Y'all Say. I'm Dr. Nee, joined by
Dr. Renee.
Listen, this is a great question that we have coming up. We're going to be talking about locums. It's funny, when we were at SNMA, I low-key caught Love. So he was Dr. Love. He's a great, he listens to our show, emergency medicine physician. Excellent guy. Does great work. He was leading the talk that we were doing on how we, make $300,000 each in different various specialties. And he was saying, Docs Outside the Box is a great place where you can learn about X, Y, and Z. They do focus a lot on locums lately. And I was like, oh, wait, I caught you on that one. What you trying to say? Right? So today's episode is going to be about locums. So guys, if you're not interested in locums, don't turn away. This stuff is actually really interesting. I'll tell you why. If you're let's say you're a pre-med student or you're a medical student,
or even an attending that's in private practice, and
you're like, I don't need to worry about that. I think it's super, just like you said, I think it's super important for you to understand, like, there's just multiple ways that you can practice. It's super important, right? Like, if you didn't get it in med school, which you're not going to get it in med school, you're not going to get it in residency, and you're not going to get it as a pre-med, then when are you going to get it? You might as well get it while you're listening and having fun listening to us, right? So, we just going to talk and answer some questions real quick about, folks who are interested in, working as an attending, but just kind of working on their own terms, which for a lot of people is working as an independent contractor. So let's jump right into this. So Dr. Renee, you have the question. You want to read it?
Yes. So we have actually two questions from Mona. One, I think we'll start with this one because this one is a follow-up to a question that we did in a previous episode. But she says, hi, Dr. Renee. Excuse me. Hi, Dr. Nee and Renee.
Get it right. Thank you very much. Get it right. Hi. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Dr.
Nee and Renee. Thank you. And I hope they did your name. I hope they put Renee lowercase. Thank you.
Really, Nee?
Move on.
You're just so petty. Hi, Dr. Nee and Renee. Thank you again for the helpful insights you've been sharing. I had a follow-up question regarding the choice of state for setting up your LLC. I'm currently living and doing residency in New York City. I like the city, but as you know, taxes are pretty high. After residency, I am not tied to any particular state, though I do feel somewhat connected to New York. I was wondering, in your experience, is it worth setting up a locums-focused LLC in another state solely for the purpose of reducing taxes? Also, when you chose to set up your LLC in New Jersey, was that decision influenced by tax considerations, or were there other factors that played a more significant role? Thanks so much in advance. So that's our first question, or first group of questions. So thank you, Mona, for writing in. I'm going to actually let Dr. Nee have first stab at this one because you tended to do more of that side of setting.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Mona. Hopefully we got your name right. No, I didn't think about any of that stuff. And I'll be really honest with you, to this day, I still don't think about that stuff because it's a lot of work, right? Like, so setting up a LLC, you have to you have to fill out some state paperwork. And then, once you become an entity, once your business becomes a business, then, you're going to realize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to maintain that business, right? Whether you do it in New York City, Idaho, New Jersey, Florida, wherever it is, there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. I don't think it's stuff that is so much that you can't really, work in that fashion. And it's like prohibitive from you being able to do locums on your own. No, it's not that. It's just that you have to be on your P's and Q's and make sure that, for example, you have a system so that if, let's say, the IRS or the state federal government or the state agency wants to write you information, where's those letters going to? Right? Let's say someone wants to connect with you for any reason. Where's that information going to? Like, let's say that someone just wants to ask you some questions. Like, there's all these different things that you should start thinking about. Right. So I get it. So basically what it is I live in New York City, which is a high cost of living area. Should I, and the taxes are always high. Whenever you hear about athlete contracts, a lot of times you hear people will say, look, I don't want to play in New York because the tax is too damn high. Let me go to Texas where there's no state tax, or Florida where there's no state tax, and I can keep more of my money, blah, 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 blah. People say this all the time. Right. But we got to front and can't front, like, living in New York City is dope. Right. Like being able to get on a train, or it's just being in New York is just a different vibe. So
Yeah.
I would say this. I would make sure that you figure out a way to start your business and maintain your business in the most tax efficient way, as well as the most time saving way that you can do that. Right. I don't know if, okay, if you live in New York City, but you have an LLC that's created in Delaware or in Pennsylvania or anywhere else outside of New York City, if that's going to save you in taxes. That's really a question that we should be presenting to our CPA. And I'm going to submit that to our CPA and ask what they think about that. And I'll get back to you on that. I don't know about that, but just know that if you create an LLC in another state, right? Let's say, for example, you get a locums job. You live in New York City and you get a locums job and you're working in New York City, but your company is in, let's say, Pennsylvania. Well, the fact that your company is in Pennsylvania, you're going to have to pay state taxes to Pennsylvania anyway, right?
Right.
And listen, the fact that your address, your home address is in New York, I'm assuming that if you do an LLC, you're going to want your locums company to pay your LLC, and then you're going to want your LLC to pay you. Well, guess what? When your LLC pays you, they're going to pay you according to where your address is, which is New York City. And New York City taxes are high.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Right. So there's just a lot of ways that you can get around it. The question is do you want to deal with that? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. You know, so sometimes what people do is they work a little bit harder to bring in a little bit of cash so that they can live, in New York City. So that's one thing to consider. So if you want to know what we did, I started off my LLC in New Jersey, and I just started off in New Jersey because after I finished fellowship, I started working locums, and I was living with my parents, and I was helping them pay their bills and everything. And I would live, in one of the bedrooms, and then I would just be gone for like several weeks, come back home and help pay their bills and do all the things that I wanted to do. So I started an LLC in New Jersey, even though I was working in Pennsylvania, I was working in Wisconsin, I was working, where was I working? I was working in Minnesota. Remember, I was working in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Idaho, and some other state I can't remember. But I would do like a four-state, like I had a four-state cycle. I just go around and I come back to Jersey, chill out for a week or so, or what have you, do barbecue, whatever, help dad with, all those different things that we needed to do. It was really great times. When it came time for taxes, I do have to let you know that we had to file 4 different tax returns with all the different states that we were at. So we still had to do all that. My CPA had to, help me manage all of those different things.
Yeah.
And that being my first year out of fellowship, that would have been really difficult for me to do by myself. So I feel really good that I had a CPA, but that's just something to consider, that it's going to be tough, to, really coordinate everything based off of where you're going to have low tax. Like, it's just hard to avoid because you live in New York, you're going to have to pay city taxes. And you're probably going to have to end up paying state taxes because you live there. And if you have your business in another state, you're going to have to pay taxes just to have your company in that state also. So my advice is just talk to we'll see if we
talk
can
to a
find
CPA.
a
We'll
CPA
see if
about
we
that.
can. Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is, just keeping up with what is going on in that state, right? Because you don't live there. So now you have to keep tabs on what's going on in that state. Just because it doesn't have, income tax now, and chances are that it will, that the states that don't have income tax now will continue in that vein. But if they don't, you know, are you keeping up with the goings on in that particular state? So just using that state, whichever state that you decide, because it doesn't have income tax, may not necessarily be enough, right? You may need to know a little bit more about what's going on and just how you potentially might be affected, which becomes difficult because you live in one state and now you're like, are you really going to keep tabs? So I think that's really important because not all states obviously are created equal. That's the only
Yeah.
thing that I would add there.
And I mean, the other thing is, well, should you consider just moving, right? I don't know, man. Like for me, I think that's the whole point, of once you become like you've been doing that for med school and you did that probably for residency, right? You had to go someplace to go fit in. Got into a med school, you decided to go there, you had to move. It may not have been in the area that you wanted to be. Residency, I'm not sure. Well, I guess your residency is in New York, possibly.
Mhm.
But for me, it's like once you become an attending, just choose the place that you want to live. That's what I would do. Unless it's some type of extenuating circumstances. Now, for us, we didn't live where we wanted to live initially. We lived in central Pennsylvania because we had almost, $700,000 in student loan debt. So we knew living in New Jersey or living in New York, like a significant portion of our money was going to go towards paying off, going towards housing
Living expenses,
and living
basically.
expenses.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, we didn't even want to work in New York. I didn't want to work in
Yeah, I didn't
Jersey,
want to work I still don't want to work in New York. I'm like,
you know. You know what I'm saying? So we just said, look, we
you
found this
say,
spot. It was good. And it was like, yeah, let's make it work.
being a patient in a New York City hospital has made me not want to be a doctor in a New York City hospital.
Yeah.
But yeah, but thank you for submitting that question, Mona. I hope, the answer was at least somewhat helpful. At the very least, I would say go and talk with a CPA, see if it's worth it. Talk with other people maybe who are doing, what you're considering doing and see how it's working for them. But I wouldn't just make that decision just kind of based on this one notion that, well, these particular states don't have taxes, so therefore I'm going to do that, right? Because there's never just kind of a one reason to do something, right? You want to weigh your pros and cons. So that's what I would do.
And I would say, Mona, like the best way to get around this at this point right now is um, like instead of like focusing, like I said, you still got to talk to a CPA. They can give you the best advice, or a tax lawyer. They can give you the best advice. But I think from our standpoint, I think the best advice right now is don't worry about chasing the tax friendly states. Like focus on things like maximizing business deductions, right, with your LLC, making sure that, in your apartment, is there a spot that's deliberately that's going to be there for doing your business, right? Doing notes, billing the hospital, taking phone calls for your work, right? You need a home office because you can get a rather nice deduction, which decreases your
Mhm.
tax burden by having a home office, right?
Yep.
And that's based off of the square footage of your house. That's something to consider. Make sure that you get like a retirement plan, right? I'm talking about a SEP IRA or even a solo 401k. We've talked about that on plenty of episodes, right? That also reduces your taxable income and you want to try to maximize that, right?
Right.
Then
Your
what
health
else? You could,
insurance.
oh yeah, health insurance. Like those are things that you can do to really like control that you know of to really decrease your your
Your
tax
tax
burden. And then
burden.
I think hiring a CPA is always like hiring an expert to walk you through this process, who can teach you through this process is super important. Very,
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
Wish you luck. Wish you luck, Mona.
Good
Great
luck,
question.
Mona.
All right. It is my favorite part of the show where I get to talk about locum tenens and what me and Renee do, as well as answer a question from the audience. So listen, guys, me and Dr. Renee have been doing locum tenens for well over 10 years. Listen, it gives us the career fulfillment that we need, but also at the same time allows us to have the work-life balance that we need to have, right? It allows me to be here to talk to you, allows me to be, plugged in with my family, my kids, my wife, and still be here and talk to you guys for close to 10 years now. So listen, let's answer this question from Dr. Kevin. Dr. Kevin is a full-time locum tenens emergency medicine physician, and this is what he writes. I love the flexibility of locums, but since I'm not employed by a hospital, I don't have benefits. This is real. Should I really be thinking about disability insurance right now? Dr. Kevin, I appreciate the question. Thank you very much for writing in this question. You know, I got all the answers. And the short answer to this is 100% yes. Yes. And look, if you're already working as a locum tenens ER doc, man, you should have had disability insurance yesterday, right? Let's get to the point. Like, one of the biggest misconceptions I would say about disability insurance right now, if you're listening, is that you can worry about it later, right? I'm gonna worry about it later. I'm gonna take care of it when it comes up, and later you can put whatever time reference, time interval on it. But it's a big deal, right? Because especially as a locum tenens doctor, you are your own safety net, right? Like, there is no HR department if an issue occurs. There's no benefits package, right? Part of the reason why you get paid so well is, there's no benefits, right? So you have to purchase benefits on your own, right? And there definitely is not any type of employer-backed disability coverage. I'll be very honest about that. And even the employer-backed disability coverage that you have is not very good. Like, even if you are working as an employed doctor, you should have your own private type of disability insurance. And that's real talk, right? So if something happens to you, an injury, an illness, a burnout related condition, and let's be real, that happens more often than you think. And let's say you can't work. Your income stops. That's it. There's no salary that you get to depend on. There's no work. That means there's no pay, right? So that is where a private disability insurance plan comes in. And also, if you're looking for a private disability insurance plan, like, you got to make sure that it's true own occupation policy. I'm going to say that again. Make sure it is true own occupation policy. You want to be sure that when you're looking at a plan that it says that lingo in there, right? And that means that if you can't work, I'm gonna be honest, if let's get to the real, let's say as an emergency medicine doctor, or let's say you're an anesthesiologist, if you cannot work in that specific field, right? Or even general surgery, right? I'm a general surgeon. If I can't do general surgery anymore, but I want to do something else, that means I'm still going to get paid, right? And that's a really big deal, right? There's a lot of fine language out there that is meant to trip you up. But if you have true own occupation disability insurance, that means that you can do other things if you can't work in your specific field, right? And since you're a 1099 contractor, I got a little cheat code here, right? Your premiums may be tax deductible as a business expense. So not only are you protecting your income, you're being smart with your taxes also. Now, that last caveat, I'm going to be honest with you, make sure you talk to your tax professional about that. Make sure you talk to your financial advisor about that. They may give you some additional or different type of advice. So it's super important that you run that by them first, okay? So, look, disability insurance, Dr. Kevin, it's not about fear. It's about financial responsibility. You've worked hella hard. You've worked way over 10 years to protect this career, to build this career, excuse me. So protect that income at all costs, right? It's super important, right? So I recommend, if you're looking to get disability insurance, listen, I'm telling you right now, I recommend you work with Jamie Fleischner with Set for Life Insurance. All right. We've been working with her personally for over 10 years. She helped me and Renee get rid of our really expensive disability insurance and get to something that was way more cost effective and actually had better coverage. And that actually was the biggest start of us paying off our student loan debt, was us first realizing that, hey, we're paying way too much to disability insurance as well as to whole life insurance. Let's get something that's way more economical. And 3 years later, we paid off over almost $700,000 of student loan debt. So we know a thing or two about working with cost-effective disability insurance. Super important. So I recommend Jamie Fleischner with Set for Life Insurance. She specializes in coverage for doctors, especially independents like you and me. All right. So there's no fluff in what she's talking about. It's just honest advice. And she's got access to multiple top tier carriers. So I want you to take a look at setforlifeinsurance.com or tap on the link in the show notes. All right. To set up a free, no pressure consultation with her. All right. Super important. And remember, this is Docs Outside the Box, and outside the box doesn't mean unprotected. Dr. Kevin, thanks for writing in.
All right. So Mona is going to have another question that we're going to answer today.
It's taking all our time. Dag, Mona. How many questions you got, yo?
Mona got questions on questions on questions. Okay, so Mona, who is a third year neurology student, says, after listening to your podcast, I've decided to pursue locum work after graduating in 2026.
Good
I've been,
job.
yeah, good job. I've been reaching out to some recruiting agencies to better understand the job market for neurology. Many of them request a CV either before or after an informational meeting. I wanted to ask for your advice. Do you think it's okay to share my CV at this stage? I recall you mentioning the concept of exclusivity in your podcast, where an agency having your CV might limit your options. Could you clarify how this works and what I should be mindful of before sending it out? Thank you both for your time and for the valuable insights you share on your podcast. Best, Mona.
Oh,
Thanks for this
well,
question,
good.
too, Mona. Yeah, this is a great
Listen,
question.
man, CVs, I'll be honest with you, Mona. CV is gold, electronic gold or paper gold, whichever way you want to look at it. But that's the currency that locum tenens companies work with, right? Because that CV represents so much more than just, what you've accomplished. It represents, as you mentioned, exclusivity, right? So the goal of a locums company is to present physicians or nurse practitioners or PAs or whatever it may be to a hospital, a clinic that is looking for that specific, position. And once that CV is sent to a hospital and they're looking at it, now that hospital is exposed to you, the practitioner. And once you are exposed to a practice or a hospital or a clinic, once you are exposed, once they look at you, your CV by that agency, then that is it. You are stuck in that type of, whatever that may be, that space,
Exclusivity. Yeah.
exclusivity with that hospital. You're stuck with that agency
Mhm.
in that fashion for usually it's about 2 years, right? So it's not that just giving your CV to the company locks you in. It's when the company, the agency gives your CV to the hospital, and then the hospital looks at it.
Yeah.
Once they look at it, that's it. You're
Right.
stuck in that, right?
Right.
Because it's based off of the introduction, right?
Mhm.
So, so what I would say is this: if you're looking at different agencies and you want to know like how much you think you can get or what jobs are out there, and they want to see your CV, that's fine. You can let them see your CV, but you have to be very clear. And I would put this in an email
Email.
and say,
Yeah.
hey, before you send my CV out to any hospital, to any clinic, to anybody, you need to have my written
Express
approval,
written approval.
right? You have to have a written approval from me by email that says that, yes, you can send my CV to this hospital, to this clinic, to
Yeah.
whatever. So here's an example. You meet an agency, you talk to, Nee Darko and Renee agency, and we're like, yo, man, we're gonna get you mad money, yo. We're gonna get you mad money working at mad hospitals. You wanna do neurology? Yo, we got you, yo. We got you. But first, you gotta like credential with us, yo. You gotta give us your name. We gotta know all the different malpractice things you're in. We gotta know where you got your education. We need all that stuff, your degrees, all that. And we also need your CV. And you're like, they sound like they're dope. Look how they talk, right? And listen how they talk and stuff, right? They
Uh-huh.
sound like they're woke, right? And let me let me sign up with them, right? So now, when you do that, I may say once you sign up with our company, right? We just say, okay, well, listen, there's like a whole bunch of different hospitals that need a neurologist, and we want to send your CV to hospital A so they can consider you for a job that's going to pay you X amount of dollars.
Mhm.
We technically cannot just send your CV to that hospital without your permission, right?
Mm.
But I know earlier you heard me say, make sure you send an email that says da 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 da. So I'm gonna tell you right now, sometimes you have some really overzealous representatives of that agency who will just submit your
Mhm.
CV on your
Everybody don't
behalf,
care about the contract.
right? Trust me. Particularly, you'll see that at smaller companies, right? You'll see that
Mhm.
smaller agencies or agencies that may be run by other doctors or agencies that may not really know like the national guidelines
Mhm.
of this stuff, right? NALTO. They may not know the NALTO guidelines of this stuff. And they'll submit your CV for you and you may not know about it. And then now you're in this hospital system, or you may not be able to go to a certain hospital system because let's say this agency that sent you said, hey, we're going to pay you $150 an hour. Meanwhile, you found another agency that you signed up for. And that's okay, guys. You can sign up for multiple
Multiple
agencies, right?
agencies.
You don't have to just go with us. You can go with all these other different agencies, right? Because there's thousands of opportunities out there, right? You can go with different hospital or different agencies, excuse me. And let's say, for example, you know, hospital A decided to contract with multiple agencies, and now the agency B is like, hey, like we'll pay you $200,
For the same
but
hospital.
for the same hospital, but you can't move that route anymore because hospital or agency A already submitted your CV to that hospital. So now you're stuck in that 150 zone.
Right.
So that's why it's super important that yes, you can work with different agencies. That's great. I actually recommend that.
Mm-hmm.
But the key thing is to always email them and say, please do not send out my CV without my written, how do you say it? Use your,
My
which
expressed written
expressed,
consent.
express written consent, right? So that means they got to email you and ask for your permission before they submit your CV. And usually it usually works like this. Okay, like we got this job that I think you'll be perfect for. Um, they do X, Y, and Z. Can we submit your CV there? And then you think about it and then you write back yes, or you say no. And that's it.
Yep. That's
Anything you want
that's
to add,
usually
Renee?
it. Yeah, I mean, it's not just for locum jobs either, right? So you have to be really careful, even if it's just regular recruitment, right? If you have different recruiter agencies that potentially are looking for jobs for you for even permanent positions, you have to be very careful about that as well,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
the
That's how they
fortune
make
is
their
in,
money.
yeah, the fortune is in the referral,
Yeah,
right? The fortune's
100%.
in the referral. So you just have to be really careful. So this is, this is where we say, yeah, we talk about locums a lot, right? Like we said, Dr. Love said, oh, we talk about locums a lot. We do talk about locums a lot, but there's some overlap with permanent positions. And, you just have to know, just because, let's say, for example, you say, you know what, I'm going to do locums. You decide that you're going to sign up with an agency or agencies, and you submit your CV to the agency. The agency asks, hey, can I submit your CV to this hospital? You say yes. You decide, however, you want to work permanently at that hospital for whatever reason. You're like, oh, bump locums,
Oh
don't want
yeah,
to do that anymore. I
yeah,
want to work here.
yeah.
You gonna have to talk to somebody, because you can't just decide that, well, this was for locums and now, I don't want to work locums anymore. You're gonna have to talk to somebody, because
This
potentially
happens a lot.
they might have to
This
buy
happens a
you
lot.
out. Right.
Yeah,
The hospital
it's
may
usually
actually have to
yeah,
buy you out.
yeah. So that the agency has a relationship with the hospital. Says, hey, listen, we're gonna send you this doc, but you can't just take them.
Right.
Right? You can't just take, let's say, because this happens, people will come and be like, yo, I really like it here. Like, this is amazing. I know I lived in New York City, but I really like it in Blackfoot, Idaho. I
Right.
want to live here. I
Right.
want to work here permanently.
Yep.
And these places, don't forget, when you're working as a locums, it costs the hospital more sometimes to pay you, right? So they may say, hey, um, this is working, right? The hospital, like, this is working. Why don't you work here? We'll put you on a salary and all these different things. You like it here. And you'd be like, yeah, that's great. I'll do it. And it's like, but you can't do that, guys. You cannot do that because you're there under the auspices that you're working with an agency.
Right.
And in order for the hospital to hire you permanently, they got to pay that agency off. And sometimes that might be like 50K, 50 stacks or 100 stacks, right? The agency wants their money.
Right.
So if you're not going to be working for them anymore, we're going to have to need some type of compensation.
Yeah.
This is like the music
Because
industry
it's a
almost.
damage, right? It's a damage to
Yeah.
the agency, right?
Oh,
That
yeah. Yeah.
you were going to work and now they are losing you as a source of income. So it's a damage. So they essentially have to get compensated for that.
But
Um,
I think sometimes people listening to this are like, man, there's so many things that there's so many things that I gotta worry about with locums. Maybe I shouldn't go into it. Like, guys, it's not like that. Like, there are things that you gotta worry about,
with
but there are
everything.
things you gotta worry about if you was employed also.
Right.
It's just something to just keep in the back of your mind, and you can ask people, you can ask us. Don't be afraid to jump into locums just because
Yeah.
it's just certain things that you weren't anticipating. But I know there's a lot of people who are like that.
Yeah. There's no problem free industry, right? Like you're just going to it's just a question of which problems are you going to encounter. That's all. But this was a really good question because I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize when they start working with recruiters exactly what is happening. What
Yeah,
is
yeah.
happening. And so engaging with the recruiter, you just need to know, you need to understand what is the agreement by which you are working with this agency, by which you are working with this recruiter. So
Yeah,
just, be careful.
one thing I would say too is, listen, y'all, like, I think the advice we give to Mona, this is good, right? She's probably listening, like, y'all ain't saying my name right. Yo, you should, when you write in next time and let us know we're not saying your name right, um, like
Give us
record,
a
like,
pronunciation.
yeah, give us a pronunciation if we're saying it wrong. So we apologize if we're saying it wrong. But Mona,
Damn.
I'm
You
just
just had, you
saying,
just had to say it like that. But Mona.
listen, I would say this. Remember, you are in control. You are always in control of this situation and you should act appropriately, right? So, when you're talking with a representative of the agency, just make sure this is more of a partnership. Make sure you are like really directing what you really want, right? Don't be led, lead. Okay. And I'll tell you about my example of how I didn't lead. So,
Mhm.
I was working when I first started after fellowship, I said, I'm going to do locums. And listen, like I had never made more than what, $50,000, right? I never made more than $50,000
Being in residency.
being in residency. And then I started working with a locums company and, at the time, trauma surgery was really like in need. It still is really in need. But I was young. I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. And, they would tell me about all these different jobs. And I would just let them kind of just lead me to all these different places without really necessarily thinking about what it's doing to me. And there was at one point where I just said, look, here's my calendar. You can fill it up. You can fill it up for me, right? And that was a big mistake,
Man.
guys. That was a big, because I was like, yo, I'm just trying to make money, yo. And that was a big mistake because what ended up happening at one point is I worked at one hospital and I worked a night shift. Sorry, I did a 24-hour shift, right? I worked I think it was like a Monday or Tuesday. I worked Monday, 7 a.m. and I finished no, sorry. I worked for a whole week, right? Not straight, but I worked for a whole week. And then the last shift was like on a Tuesday. And I did a 24-hour shift and I finished Wednesday morning. And I was supposed to be at a place 2 hours away and work starting at like 1 o'clock p.m.
Mhm.
Right. So I want you guys to follow me, right? I was supposed to be finishing my job at 7 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and I was supposed to be at a place 2 hours away and start working at 1 p.m.
Mhm.
Right. So, and the locums person knew this, but you got to remember, like, their focus is how much throughput can I get this doctor, this nurse practitioner, this PA, this respiratory therapist? How much can I get this person to work? Right.
Yep.
There's no way that person didn't know that. And ultimately, it's my fault. I should have checked the calendar, but I was so
No,
big on
no,
like,
no,
I got
no.
to make money.
Ultimately, it was your fault. You should not have given him your calendar. That was your first mistake, was giving him your
Look at Renee
calendar.
reading me. Look at Renee reading me.
Absolutely. You should not have given him.
Let the record show. Can you say that first? Say that.
Let the
Let the record.
record show that you gave him the calendar. You opened yourself up to a vulnerability, right? And
Yes, I did.
he
Yes, I did.
he essentially took advantage of that.
Like we
And
say, ain't nobody, no, you can't, your money, nobody's going to care about your money more than you. And
right.
nobody's going to care about your schedule and your working life more than you.
Yep.
Simple as that. Boom.
Exactly. Nobody gonna care about your time more than you. And so what you don't want is, like you said, to be led. You want to be able to lead, and you can say no. If someone calls you and says, "Hey, I have this, I have that," and I can't do it. I can't do it. Here's when I'm available. That's what I do love about locums is it really, after you get into the groove of it, you really start to understand what your time means to you. Coming from medical school and residency, or if you're doing fellowship, you're always on someone else's time, right? And every time that you're on someone else's time, or rather, I should say, any time that you decline being on that time, on someone else's time. You are always worried that it is going to cost you something. It's going to cost you an opportunity. It's going to cost you, clout. It's going to cost you, appearing to be a really good resident or a really good fellow, right? It's going to cost you something. What's great about locums is it's not going to cost you anything. It's not. To say no and decline to be on someone else's time, it's not going to cost you anything, because here's what you need to understand. If you can't work in the way that someone wants you to work, then that wasn't the work you're supposed to be doing in the first place. That's it. And so there are plenty of other opportunities out there for you to be able to be very efficient with
You
how
got
you work
to,
and how
guys, you got to
you
practice.
your
You
income.
got to practice that muscle. You got to practice that muscle
Yeah.
early on to say, no, but I can do this, or no, I'm just not available.
Right.
And that's it. It takes a while. It takes a lot, but you can do it. And it helps you in the rest of your life also.
Yeah.
I remember there was one place that I was working locums at, and it was, let's just say it was time for me to move on to another job. Like emotionally, it was just too much. And there was a point where, um, from a working with coworkers, I just did not enjoy it. And there was a point where I was just like getting upset at them. And Renee had picked up on that, and she was like, just don't go back anymore. And I was like, well, I can't. She's like, but you're locum, so you could just say you don't want to go back.
You don't want to go back there. I don't like it here.
And
Bye.
and I like had dates coming up like several weeks in advance. It was outside of the 30-day window, but I had weeks that I already set up and everything. And I remember I called them and I said, you know what, guys, I'm not going to work X, Y, and Z anymore. I'm done. You know what they said? Okay, thanks. And that was it. Right. And
Right.
I spent so much time focusing on what they're going to say, if they're going to be
Perseverating.
disappointed, are
Yeah.
they going to be mad about it, all these different things. And I just learned, right? I was like, well, they don't even care. They just want a warm body to cover whatever it may be. And probably they also knew that, look, like this relationship is not really working anymore. And I was glad to leave that place. And you know what? That program doesn't even exist anymore. So yeah, you know what? But the most
Why are you
important thing.
reveling in that?
But the most important thing is this. Listen, the way how they treat people, they know who they are. The way how they treat people, you can't treat people like that, right? But the most important thing is this, guys. Like, you're in control, particularly once you finish. Excuse me, actually, to be honest with you, you're in control even in residency, right? It's just you really got to start practicing that muscle, right? You got to start practicing that muscle. I know you don't, but you are, like, cause you can, like we talked about even in that bullying episode, right? With Dr. Bill Brew, right? Which was amazing.
Yeah.
Right. There are times when you come in, there's certain power dynamics, hierarchical dynamics, but you can still let it be known that, look, like, I'm
Yeah.
not the one,
I mean, always set boundaries for sure.
right?
Right. Always
You're not gonna
set
come in
boundaries
saying,
about
you're not gonna come in like Denzel Washington, like, yo, I'm King Kong and I'm putting everybody in Pelican Bay.
You mother will be playing basketball in Pelican Bay when I get finished with you. King Kong ain't got on me.
You're not gonna come in like that in your residency. But also at the same time, I think there's a way that you can learn to be, look at that fan. Oh man, I hope he's not like that in Black Panther. Don't let him do that in Black Panther. All right? Kugler, don't let him do that in Black Panther, all right?
Yeah, I need to see. First of all, hold on. I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick. Okay? Listen, Denzel, if you are out there listening, I want you to
Zoom
get
in on
with.
Zoom in on Renee. Keep talking. Zoom in on Renee, Alfred. Zoom in on.
I want you to hook up with the coach, your African dialect, African accent coach now.
Oh, but he did it with Stephen Biko. He did it before with Stephen Biko. It was good.
It's all right.
That was like 30 years ago for Cry Freedom, but he did it.
It's all right. It was all right. But I want him to do that today.
Wait, hold on.
Didn't he do a Jamaican accent once?
Don't you know this is going down road until 4 p.m., which is at least 5 hours away, 7 days a week for the last 10 years. So what are you doing coming up it?
Hold on a second.
With,
Who's the guy who got killed? Who's the guy who got killed by Killmonger? What was his name? Forrest Whitaker. Black,
Oh,
his African
Forrest
accent wasn't that
Whitaker.
great.
Listen, this is why they killed him off.
Yo,
You're
listen, but
like, no, that
nothing can be as
accent is
bad.
not gonna work.
Guys, nothing can be as bad as Will Smith's African accent. All right.
If you continue to deny my work, the world will deny my work. But men, your men, continue to die. Tell the truth.
Nothing can be
That
as bad
was
as that.
bad.
So Denzel Washington
That-
has the floor is really low. Okay. So,
That
but
was
all of this, like,
no,
you can't do none of that.
No. It goes like this. Like this. This is the Denzel finger.
You think you could do this to me, Black Panther?
And then no, but sometimes he does both. Like this.
That's not allowed. You can't do that.
And then
You
sometimes
can't do
does,
that.
Sometimes he does like he's typing. Like this. Like this. But it has to go like this. It's got to come up and drag a little bit like that.
All right, now you're dragging it out too much. You're dragging it out too much. All right, so let's get back to answering this question. Oh my God. So listen, where was I at? I forgot where I was at. Listen, Mona, you got this. You got this, Mona. You in control. You're in charge. Listen, everybody who wants to write in and ask us some questions, Renee, tell them how to.
So
ask
you
us
can do
questions.
like Mona did and text us. She texted us, both of us.
How does she text?
Or both of her questions. She texted us both of those questions. So you can text us like Mona did. Plymouth Rock.
Landed on us.
Landed on us. You can also send us a message in our DMs on Instagram, TikTok. You can write a comment on any of our questions write a comment on any of our posts on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok, or you can go to our website, docsoutsidethebox.com. Or if you just go down below, you'll see our fan mail as well as our text number that Mona used. So you can do that. But there are lots of different ways to get in contact with us. And we love getting questions from you guys and answering those questions. So keep them coming. We have so many questions that we need to answer.
I feel like I'm Batman. I feel like we're Batman. We're going to answer those questions, guys. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
Peace.